You're driving alone on a pitch-black highway in the middle of nowhere. Your car slides into a ditch and you call your parents for help. You're calm, just a little shaken, but everything seems fine. You keep talking, guiding them in. But then, without warning, your voice cuts off. Forever. What happened to Brandon Swanson on that quiet Minnesota road in 2008? What you're about to hear is real and deeply unsettling. It was the early hours of May 14th, 2008. 19-year-old Brandon Swanson, a smart, well-liked college student, had just wrapped up the last day of classes at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. He was celebrating with friends in Canby, a small rural town in Minnesota. Nothing wild, just a few drinks and goodbyes before summer break. Sometime after midnight, Brandon got into his car to drive home to Marshall, Minnesota, a town roughly 30 miles away. He told his friends he felt fine to drive. He wasn't intoxicated, just tired and eager to sleep in his own bed. He never made it. At 1:54 a.m., Brandon called his parents. His voice was calm but urgent. "Hey," he said, "I drove into a ditch. I'm not hurt. Can you come get me?" His parents, Annette and Brian, immediately got in their car and headed toward Lind, where Brandon said he thought he was. They kept him on the phone as they drove, scanning the dark, silent roads for their son's headlights. But something was off. No matter where they went, they couldn't find him. Brandon told them he could see the lights of a nearby town, but from their location, there were no lights, no town, just miles of empty farmland. Still on the phone, Brandon decided to start walking. He described his surroundings as he went: gravel roads, fences, the sound of running water nearby. His parents drove slowly, turning down different roads. As Brandon tried to guide them, both parties increasingly confused by how they couldn't seem to meet. The call stretched on for nearly 47 minutes. He was patient at first, but as the minutes ticked by, Brandon began to sound frustrated. "Oh, come on," he snapped at one point, clearly irritated they couldn't find each other. Then, just before 2:30 a.m., something chilling happened. Brandon suddenly said, "Oh shit," and the call ended. Not dropped, not faded, just ended. His parents tried calling back, but the phone rang out. They waited, hoping maybe it was just a dead zone or his phone had died, but the silence never broke. Sunrise, they called the police. But instead of springing into action, the police told them, "Brandon's an adult. He probably just ran off." Annette and Brian knew better. Brandon wasn't the kind of kid to vanish without a reason. They refused to let the story end there. Later, that morning, Brandon's car was found, nowhere near where he had said he was. It was in a ditch off Highway 68 near Taunton, 25 miles from Lind. Why would Brandon say he was in Lind if he was nowhere close? Even stranger, his car wasn't wrecked. There were no signs of damage, no broken glass, no blood, just a stalled-out vehicle facing a field, as if he'd just calmly driven off the road. Local authorities launched a search. Dogs traced his scent down a gravel road, along a ditch and into a field. Then, it abruptly stopped near a stream. Divers combed the shallow water. Helicopters scanned the land. Hundreds of volunteers walked every nearby mile, but they found nothing. No wallet, no backpack, no phone, no body. It was as if Brandon had walked into the field and simply disappeared. And yet, one question haunted everyone involved. What did Brandon see right before the call went dead? What caused him to say, "Oh shit," that last word his parents would ever hear? In Part 2, we'll follow the twisted theories, terrifying possibilities, and chilling clues that have kept Brandon's case alive for over 15 years. Because the scariest part? There are still no answers, only silence. Imagine walking into the darkness, talking to your parents on the phone, then whispering, "Oh shit," and never being seen again. No scream, no struggle, just gone. What made Brandon Swanson vanish? And why, to this day, does every possible theory only lead to more disturbing questions? By the time the sun rose, over the endless farmlands of western Minnesota on May 14th, 2008, the Swanson family's world had collapsed into confusion and dread. Brandon, who had been speaking to them calmly just hours earlier, had seemingly disappeared into thin air. Police finally took the case seriously once his car was found, miles away from where Brandon had believed he was. It was parked neatly, in a ditch on the edge of a remote gravel road, near the small town of Taunton. No damage, no signs of distress, no clues, and strangest of all, Brandon had been completely wrong about his location. He'd told his parents he was near Lind, a full 25 miles south. But Brandon wasn't drunk. Multiple friends confirmed he'd only had 1 or 2 drinks. He seemed fully coherent on the phone. So how could a smart college student mistake one rural highway for another by that much? Unless something was distorting his sense of direction. When tracking dogs were brought in, they picked up Brandon's scent trail from his abandoned car. They followed it through tall grass, alongside a gravel road and past farmland fences. Then they reached a stream. Brandon had told his parents on the phone he could hear running water. The trail continued faintly across the creek, then suddenly stopped. Right there, in the middle of a field. No footprints, no torn clothing, nothing. Local authorities thought he might have slipped and drowned. But the water in that stream was shallow, barely waist deep. Divers combed it multiple times. Nothing. What if Brandon crossed that stream, then was met by something else? As the investigation dragged on, theories began to swirl. Theory number 1. He fell into the river and drowned. But if that were the case, where was the body? Search crews, helicopters, and cadaver dogs covered every inch of the Yellow Medicine River and the surrounding ditches. They found no trace. Theory number 2. Brandon was attacked. Some believe he encountered a wild animal, but animal attacks leave blood, clothing, drag marks. There were none. Others suspect a person, maybe a stranger, or someone following him. Yet the area was remote, surrounded by miles of fields and empty roads. Theory number 3. Brandon was picked up. This is where things get darker. What if, after crossing the creek, Brandon encountered someone who offered him a ride? Someone who stopped, not to help, but with malicious intent. That would explain the sudden, "oh shit," phone disconnecting, and the complete erasure of his trail. But again, no vehicle tracks were found, no witnesses, no evidence of a second person. Theory number 4. He planned to vanish. The most far-fetched theory was that Brandon staged his disappearance. But by all accounts, Brandon was happy, motivated, and close with his family. He was planning to transfer colleges, not run from life. His last words weren't cold or rehearsed. They were terrified. In the weeks that followed, Brandon's parents continued searching. They returned to the area again and again, posting flyers, asking locals, and begging media outlets to cover the story. But the case soon slipped into obscurity, and so did Brandon. In true horror fashion, the lack of logic opened the door for something more sinister. Some Reddit threads and independent podcasts began to speculate. What if Brandon stepped into a thin place, a location where reality folds? There have long been rumors about certain areas in rural America, particularly in places like Minnesota, the Dakotas, and Montana, where people vanish without trace, their last words hinting at something unexplainable. Some tie it to old Native American legends of skinwalkers or forest spirits. Others point to government black sites or unnatural energy fields. Brandon's case is often mentioned in the same breath as these stories because of how impossibly clean his disappearance was. It's not just that he vanished, it's that the trail ends in open space, like something or someone wanted him gone. Another chilling detail: for several hours after Brandon vanished, his phone continued to ring when his parents and friends called. It didn't go straight to voicemail. It rang. That usually means the phone is still on and powered, still connected to a signal. For almost 12 hours, authorities used cell towers to trace his last signal, somewhere near Porter, Minnesota, but never located the exact point. At some point that afternoon, the phone finally went dead, and with it every trace of Brandon. It's been over 15 years. No remains, no confirmed sightings, no answers. What really happened on Highway 68 that night? And what did Brandon see right before that call ended? Was it just an accident or something unspeakable? Whatever the truth is, it's still out there, somewhere in the fields, waiting. Daylight broke over the fields of Lind, but the frost that had crept into the hearts of the Swanson family refused to melt. Annette and Brian Swanson hadn't slept. Their son's final words, "oh, shit," echoed on repeat like a cursed whisper haunting their minds. Police drones scanned the tall grass and cornfields. Helicopters cut through morning fog, and canine units swept the terrain. But it was as if the earth had swallowed Brandon whole. No footprints, no torn fabric, no dropped phone. It was like he'd vanished between one breath and the next. But there was one thing, something strange. One of the cadaver dogs began barking. Not a signal for human remains, but a frenzied, almost terrified howl near a broken fence line at the edge of a dried-up riverbed. When officers checked it out, they found claw marks. Not from an animal, at least not one anyone could identify. Deep gouges in the wood, 4 parallel streaks like fingers or talons, and embedded in the mud nearby, a single white sneaker. It matched Brandon's shoe size. Weeks passed. The story made local news, then national coverage. Conspiracy theories bloomed online. Was it an animal attack? A cult? Did Brandon fall into a sinkhole? But no theory stuck. Nothing fit. Because if it was just a tragic accident, why was there no trace? Then, in early October, 5 months after, Brandon vanished. Something strange happened. A hiker passing through the outskirts of Marshall, about 20 miles from where Brandon was last heard, reported hearing a faint cry for help from within a stand of dense trees. Authorities dismissed it as coincidence, but what couldn't be ignored was what came next. The man turned his phone to record the sound. For a few seconds, nothing. Then, just barely audible, the words, "Can you hear me? I'm right here," spoken. With fear, desperation, the voice matched the recording from Brandon's 911 call. Experts examined the file. There was no sign of editing or overlay, but the timestamp was what disturbed them most. It was recorded exactly at 2:24 a.m., the same time Brandon had called his parents 5 months earlier. One of the search team members, Officer Miller, returned to the location the next night. Something about the case had gripped him, beyond professionalism, beyond duty. He said he needed closure. He walked the woods with a body cam rolling. The footage that came back was never released to the public, but 2 officers who reviewed it described the final 30 seconds like this. Miller is walking through a narrow corridor of trees. The wind is unnaturally still. He stops. Then, from the left, a whisper, "Help me." The camera pans slowly. There's nothing. Then a shape darts past the frame, so fast it's barely visible. The feed cuts to black. Miller's radio crackles. Static. Then, a scream. Not a human one. They found his flashlight snapped in half. Miller hasn't been seen since. Years have passed. Brandon's case remains unsolved. But local legends have grown stronger. They say the roads near Taunton aren't safe after midnight. That if you park your car and call out, "Brandon, where are you?" you might hear a whisper in the dark. Some say it's just a tragic echo of a boy lost to the night. Others say it's something worse, something that took Brandon and is still out there, looking for someone else.